Have you ever looked in the mirror, not to fix your hair or check your appearance, but to ask yourself something deeper? Am I living wisely? It's a quiet question, one that doesn't shout or demand attention, but in its stillness, it carries more weight than we often realize. Because wisdom, real wisdom, isn't measured by degrees or status. It isn't about how much you know or how impressive you seem on the outside. According to Stoic philosophy, wisdom is about how you live, how you respond to challenge, how you treat people when no one's watching, how you stay aligned with your values even when life doesn't go your way. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, the quality of your life flows from the quality of your mind. It's not your resume, not your social following, not your bank account. It's the invisible things, your discipline, your patience, your integrity, that shape the course of your life. And yet in today's world, we're constantly pulled outward. We're told to perform, to hustle, to chase approval, and to prove our worth through achievements, appearances, and applause. It's so easy to get lost in that cycle, to confuse attention with meaning or appearance with identity. But what happens when we forget to look inward? What happens when we stop asking if the life we're building is actually one that feels aligned? This isn't about judgment. No one is immune. We all have blind spots. We all fall into habits that numb us or distract us from the truth. The problem isn't in making mistakes. It's in refusing to reflect. Because the longer we go without checking in with ourselves, the further we drift from what truly matters. The Stoics didn't view foolishness as stupidity. To them, it was the refusal to live in alignment with reason, virtue, and awareness. They believe that knowledge without application means very little, and that the true measure of a person is not how loudly they speak, but how consistently they act in integrity. So in this video, we're going to explore 9 subtle but powerful signs that someone may be drifting away from wisdom. Not to shame, not to criticize, but to gently invite reflection. Because the signs aren't always loud. Sometimes they show up in small daily choices, in how we respond to discomfort, in how we manage emotion, in what we avoid when things get hard. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to fix everything at once. But if one of these signs resonates with you, that's a sign of strength, not failure. Awareness is the first step toward growth, and even the smallest shift in perspective can change the entire direction of your life. So take a deep breath, let go of whatever noise you've been carrying, and join me step by step as we walk through the quiet signs of misalignment in the powerful process of coming home to yourself. Sign 1, talking more than listening. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone talks nonstop, but you walk away feeling invisible? It's not always loud or aggressive. Sometimes it's subtle. A friend who interrupts often, a colleague who dominates every meeting, a family member who hears words but never really listens. Now ask yourself, have you ever been that person? One of the clearest signs that we're drifting away from wisdom is when we start talking more than we listen. Not because we're bad people, but because silence feels uncomfortable. Because part of us is afraid of not being seen or heard, so we fill every space with words. We offer advice no one asked for. We jump in before someone finishes their sentence. We mistake noise for connection and forget that presence speaks louder than opinion. There's a woman I used to work with. Her name was Dana. Brilliant, confident, quick-witted. But in every conversation, she had to be the center. If you were sharing something difficult, she'd turn it into a story about herself. If you brought up an idea, she'd top it with hers. Over time, people stopped opening up to her, not because they disliked her, but because they didn't feel heard. The Stoics valued listening as a form of wisdom, not silence for silence's sake, but deep, intentional listening. Epictetus, a former slave-turned-philosopher, once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." That's not just a clever saying, it's a way of living with awareness, humility, and respect. When you listen fully, something shifts. The other person feels seen. The conversation becomes real, not just a performance, and more than that, you grow. You learn things you would have missed if you were busy preparing your next sentence. You become less reactive, more understanding, more grounded. Listening doesn't mean you don't have a voice. It means you've mastered when to speak and when to hold space. It means you no longer need to prove your worth through your volume. So ask yourself gently, when someone's talking, do I really hear them, or am I just waiting for my turn to speak? Do I pause long enough to let their words land, or do I rush to respond? And deeper still, am I listening to life, to others, to my own inner voice? Or am I drowning in my own noise? Because the wise don't speak to be heard. They speak to bring value, and they listen, not just with their ears, but with their full presence. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer someone is not your opinion, but your silence. Sign 2, overvaluing others' opinions. Have you ever held back your truth just to avoid judgment, or said yes when everything in you wanted to say no, just to be liked? Most of us have, because somewhere along the way, we were taught that being accepted is more important than being authentic. But here's the quiet danger. When you start living for other people's approval, you begin to lose pieces of yourself. Slowly, quietly, you stop checking in with your own values. You become more concerned with how things look than whether they feel right. And before long, you're not sure who you're trying to impress or who you are without their validation. I once knew a man named Lewis. He was kind, thoughtful, always ready to help, but he couldn't make a decision without polling 5 people first. He changed his tone depending on who was in the room. He over-explained every choice, always afraid of being misunderstood. And underneath all of that niceness, there was anxiety. A constant fear of not being enough, not being liked, not being accepted. The Stoics saw this as a trap, not because they didn't care about people, but because they believed your peace shouldn't be held hostage by someone else's opinion. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but we care more about their opinion than our own." Let that sink in. Wisdom isn't about ignoring feedback. It's about discerning what aligns with your values and what's just noise. When your decisions are driven by fear of disapproval, you're no longer free. You're constantly shape-shifting, editing yourself, shrinking to fit someone else's mold. That's not kindness, that's self-abandonment. There's power in being misunderstood, in not being everyone's favorite, in standing firm in what you know is right, even when it's unpopular. The truth is, some people won't like you no matter what you do, and others will only like the version of you that keeps them comfortable. So why not live honestly? Ask yourself, if no one ever complimented this decision, would I still make it? If no one knew what I just did, would I still be proud of it? These questions are quiet filters. They bring you back to your core. Because the wisest people aren't loud about their values, they live them. They don't need constant validation because they've built trust within themselves. They don't chase approval because they've chosen alignment over applause. So if you've been bending yourself just to fit, take this as a gentle reminder. You don't have to earn your worth. You just have to return to it. And when you stop living for their opinion, you start living in your truth. Sign 3, chasing material things while losing your inner peace. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, if I just had that one thing, then I'd finally feel okay? Maybe it was a promotion, a new car, a bigger home, or even public recognition. For a moment, it feels exciting, like it might fill the void. But somehow, once you get it, that feeling doesn't last. That's the hidden trap of materialism. It promises satisfaction, but delivers a hunger that only grows. And the more you chase, the more you feel like you're always just one step behind enough. I once met a woman named Teresa. From the outside, her life looked perfect. Designer clothes, a luxury SUV, picture-perfect vacations with curated Instagram posts to match. But beneath the surface, she was anxious, restless, and deeply insecure. She wasn't living, she was performing. Her worth was tied to what she could buy, what she could show, and how others responded. And any quiet moment without validation, it left her feeling empty. The Stoics warned us about this. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." That hits hard, because materialism isn't about how much you own. It's about how deeply you depend on it to feel whole. Now let's be clear. There's nothing wrong with enjoying beauty, quality, or success. Stoicism isn't anti-pleasure. What it challenges is attachment, the idea that your peace, your identity, your worth is defined by what you accumulate. Because no matter how much you gather, there will always be someone with more. No matter how new the thing, it will eventually fade, break, or go out of style. And if your happiness is tied to the fleeting, then your sense of peace will always be fragile. So what's the alternative? It's not about throwing away your belongings or rejecting comfort. It's about shifting your focus. Instead of chasing more, ask, what am I grateful for right now? Instead of proving your worth, ask, does this add meaning to my life or just distraction? Because sometimes the richest people aren't the ones with the fullest homes, but with the calmest hearts. Gratitude, simplicity, inner clarity, these are the real treasures the Stoics point to. They understood that fulfillment doesn't come from owning, but from being, from appreciating, from letting go of the endless race to prove, to display, to win. So the next time you find yourself scrolling through images of someone else's success, stop and return to yourself. You may find that the peace you were chasing outside was waiting for you all along, quietly, within. Sign 3. Chasing material things while losing your inner peace. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, if I just had that one thing, then I'd finally feel okay? Maybe it was a promotion, a new car, a bigger home, or even public recognition. For a moment, it feels exciting, like it might fill the void. But somehow, once you get it, that feeling doesn't last. That's the hidden trap of materialism. It promises satisfaction, but delivers a hunger that only grows. And the more you chase, the more you feel like you are always just one step behind enough. I once met a woman named Teresa. From the outside, her life looked perfect. Designer clothes, a luxury SUV, picture-perfect vacations with curated Instagram posts to match. But beneath the surface, she was anxious, restless, and deeply insecure. She wasn't living, she was performing. Her worth was tied to what she could buy, what she could show, and how others responded. And any quiet moment without validation, it left her feeling empty. The Stoics warned us about this. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." Well, that hits hard because materialism isn't about how much you own. It's about how deeply you depend on it to feel whole. Now, let's be clear. There's nothing wrong with enjoying beauty, quality, or success. Stoicism isn't anti-pleasure. What it challenges is attachment. The idea that your peace, your identity, your worth is defined by what you accumulate. Because no matter how much you gather, there will always be someone with more. No matter how new the thing, it will eventually fade, break, or go out of style. And if your happiness is tied to the fleeting, then your sense of peace will always be fragile. So what's the alternative? It's not about throwing away your belongings or rejecting comfort. It's about shifting your focus. Instead of chasing more, ask, what am I grateful for right now? Instead of proving your worth, ask, does this add meaning to my life or just distraction? Because sometimes the richest people aren't the ones with the fullest homes, but with the calmest hearts. Gratitude, simplicity, inner clarity. These are the real treasures the Stoics point to. They understood that fulfillment doesn't come from owning, but from being, from appreciating, from letting go of the endless race to prove, to display, to win. So the next time you find yourself scrolling through images of someone else's success, stop and return to yourself. You may find that the peace you were chasing outside was waiting for you all along quietly within. Sign 4, emotional instability and overreacting. Have you ever had your entire day ruined by one careless comment? Maybe someone cut you off in traffic. Your partner forgot something important, or a coworker said something that rubbed you in the wrong way, and suddenly you're spiraling. You can't focus. You replay it in your mind. You feel tense, agitated, and overwhelmed. It started small, but it consumed everything. We've all been there, because emotional instability isn't about being dramatic. It's about losing your center too easily. It's what happens when you haven't yet learned how to pause, how to breathe through discomfort, or how to choose a response instead of unleashing a reaction. I remember someone I used to work with. Her name was Kelsey. Brilliant, talented, and deeply driven. But her emotions ran the show. If a meeting didn't go her way, she'd shut down or lash out. One critical email would trigger a meltdown. She was kind, but unpredictable, and no one knew which version of her would show up that day. The Stoics spoke often about emotional mastery, not because they wanted us to suppress our feelings, but because they understood that peace comes from within. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's what emotional wisdom looks like. Not coldness, but calmness. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of discipline. Because here's the truth. The world will test you. People will disappoint you. Plans will unravel. But none of that can steal your peace unless you hand it over. And the moment you react without thinking, you give away your power. You let someone else's mood dictate yours. You let a single moment define your entire day. But imagine this, something triggers you, an insult, a delay, a disappointment. And instead of snapping, you pause, you take a breath, you check in with yourself, and you ask, is this worth disturbing my peace for? That moment right there, That's the shift. That's the moment you stop being ruled by your emotions and start guiding them. It takes practice. It takes self-awareness. But with time, you begin to notice your triggers. You learn to stay rooted even when life gets loud. And in a world addicted to outrage and reaction, your calm becomes a rare kind of strength. So the next time you feel yourself tightening, ready to explode or retreat, don't ask, how do I win this? Ask instead, how do I stay grounded? Because the strongest people aren't the ones who control others. They're the ones who've learned how to control themselves. Sign 5. Avoiding personal responsibility. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, if only they hadn't done that, I'd be okay? Or, my life would be so much better if circumstances were just different. It's tempting to believe that someone or something out there is responsible for how we feel, where we are, or what we lack. But here's the truth. The more we point outward, the more power we give away. Blaming others might feel good in the moment. It relieves pressure, it gives us a story, it makes the pain easier to carry. But over time, it creates something far more dangerous: helplessness. I once knew someone named Brian. He was smart, creative, full of potential, but he always had a reason why things weren't working out. His boss was unfair. His parents didn't support him. The market was bad. Timing was off. There was always a because, but never a what can I do now? And slowly his spark faded. Not because life was harder for him than others, but because he had unknowingly placed his future in everyone else's hands. The Stoics had no patience for blame. Epictetus, who was born into slavery, once said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." He didn't deny that life is harsh, but he believed that how we respond is what determines our freedom. Responsibility, in Stoic terms, is not a punishment. It's a path. It means saying, this is my life and I choose how I meet it. When you own your part, even the smallest part, you stop waiting for someone to rescue you. You begin to shift from victim to creator. And that shift, while uncomfortable, is the beginning of power. Let's be clear. Accepting responsibility isn't about blaming yourself for everything. It's not about shame. It's about choosing honesty over avoidance. It's about asking, what is mine to carry and what can I do differently? Think of a moment recently where you felt frustrated. Was it your partner, your job, the system? What would change, not out there, but within you if you stopped waiting and started leading? Because here's what I've learned. The people who change their lives aren't the ones with the easiest paths. They're the ones who stop blaming and start building. Responsibility is not a heavy burden. It's the key to freedom. It's the quiet decision every day to rise above excuses and show up with intention. Even when it's hard, even when no one sees it. So if you've been waiting for someone to fix it, maybe that someone is already here. Maybe it's you. Sign 6, avoiding self-reflection. In a world that moves fast and never stops talking, silence can feel like a luxury. But sometimes the thing we avoid the most is ourselves. We fill our calendars. We scroll through feeds. We binge watch. We stay busy. And all of it, on the surface, looks like productivity. But deep down, it's often just another way to escape the one conversation that truly matters, the one we have with ourselves. Self-reflection is uncomfortable. It means slowing down. It means asking hard questions. It means noticing the patterns we keep repeating, the ones we don't want to admit are ours. I once knew someone named Michelle. She was always in motion, always doing something, working late, helping others, volunteering on weekends, admirable on the outside. But anytime life gave her a quiet moment, she'd fill it. Music, noise, errands, anything to avoid being still, because stillness brought feelings she didn't know how to face: guilt, regret, unresolved questions. She kept moving so she wouldn't have to feel them. But here's the truth. Without self-reflection, there's no growth. And without growth, we end up living the same day over and over again, calling it a life. The Stoics practiced daily reflection. Seneca wrote letters to himself. Marcus Aurelius journaled every morning. Not to shame themselves, but to align with who they wanted to become. They knew that self-awareness wasn't weakness, it was strength. Because how can we expect to live wisely if we never stop to ask whether we are? Reflection doesn't need hours of meditation or a weekend retreat. It can begin with one quiet question at the end of your day. Did I live today in alignment with my values? That simple question can change your direction. It invites clarity. It reveals where we're drifting. And it reminds us that life isn't just something that happens to us. It's something we actively shape. When we avoid reflection, we often say things like, "This is just how I am," or "I guess I'm just unlucky." But more often than not, we're not cursed. We're simply repeating old habits without noticing. And the more we avoid looking inward, the more disconnected we become from the very power we have to change. Here's the paradox. The deeper we look within, the more grounded we become. And the more honest we are with ourselves, the more peaceful our lives start to feel. So tonight or sometime this week, take 1 minute, turn off the noise, sit with yourself, and ask, not with judgment, but with gentleness, where am I growing? Where am I hiding? And who am I becoming? Because wisdom doesn't come from the outside, it comes from within, quietly, patiently, when we're brave enough to stop and listen. Sign 7, prioritizing appearance over character. Have you ever looked at someone who seems to have it all? The perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect photos, and still felt like something was missing? Or maybe you've been that person. Polished on the outside, but quietly uncertain inside. There's nothing wrong with taking care of how we look. Presentation matters. Confidence is beautiful. But when your worth becomes tied to your appearance, when how you look becomes who you are, you start to live from the outside in rather than the inside out. I remember someone I went to school with. Her name was Angela. She was stunning, always dressed impeccably, every detail curated with intention. But underneath it, she was exhausted, constantly comparing herself to others, worried she wasn't enough. Her moods rose and fell with likes, compliments, or the absence of them. She wasn't vain. She was just stuck in a world that taught her her image mattered more than her essence. The Stoics had a very different measure of beauty. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." They believe that character, not cosmetics, defines a person's radiance. That kindness leaves a deeper impression than contour. That a steady heart shines longer than a polished smile. Real beauty in Stoic terms is quiet strength. It's humility, patience, integrity. It's how you carry yourself when no one is watching. It's the warmth in your voice, the calm in your presence, the way you treat someone who has nothing to offer you. Because looks fade, bodies change. But your character, your core, is what people feel long after they've forgotten what you wore. This doesn't mean you should neglect your appearance. Taking pride in how you present yourself can reflect respect for self and for others. But when your self-worth rises and falls with your reflection, when your confidence depends on compliments, when your peace disappears the moment someone prettier walks in the room. That's not beauty, that's bondage. Ask yourself, am I investing as much in my soul as I am in my skin? Would I still feel valuable if no one complimented me today? What parts of me would still shine if the mirror disappeared? The woman who leads with character, not just curves or colors, is the one people remember because she leaves something deeper behind, something that can't be filtered or staged, something timeless. So take care of your body, honor your presence, but don't forget the parts of you that can't be seen, the ones that never wrinkle or fade, because your greatest glow will always come from within. Sign 8, living without a clear sense of purpose. Have you ever had a stretch of days where everything felt like a blur? You wake up, go through the motions, check your phone, show up, get things done, but at the end of the day, you feel strangely tired, and you're not even sure why. That's what life feels like without direction. Busy, full, even productive, but somehow empty. When we don't have a clear sense of purpose, we start drifting. We respond to whatever's in front of us. We chase short-term wins. We keep ourselves occupied, hoping that eventually something will click. But days turn into weeks, weeks into years, and somewhere along the way, we realize we've been surviving, not living. I once met a man named Carl. He had a good job, a stable life, no major complaints, but he always looked restless. He filled his weekends with errands, his evenings with shows, his mornings with news and noise. One day over coffee, he said, "I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I just know I'm tired." Not tired from work, tired from not caring. He was missing something deeper. Not because his life lacked comfort, but because it lacked clarity. The Stoics didn't believe you needed a grand vision to live well. They believed you needed intention. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." In other words, you don't need a perfect roadmap, but you do need a direction. Living with purpose doesn't mean chasing status or checking boxes. It means knowing why you do what you do, why you get out of bed, why you say yes, why you say no. It can be simple. Maybe your purpose is to be present with your family, to create beauty, to grow in wisdom, to serve quietly in your own corner of the world. It doesn't have to impress anyone. It just has to anchor you. Ask yourself, what kind of person am I trying to become? What values do I want to embody regardless of who's watching? What would I still choose to do even if no one ever praised me for it? When you have a purpose, even a quiet one, you stop drifting. You move through life with more clarity, more resilience. You stop chasing everything because you are rooted in something. And here's the best part. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to start paying attention. The smallest flicker of meaning can light the way forward. So if you've been feeling lost, start small, ask better questions, reflect with honesty, and remember, you don't need a big dream to live a meaningful life. You just need a reason that's true for you. Sign 9, always seeking comfort, avoiding challenge. There's a subtle danger in modern life that almost no one talks about. It doesn't shout, it doesn't crash down, it creeps in quietly through soft routines, familiar patterns, and the constant pursuit of ease. And that danger is this: becoming too comfortable. We all want to feel safe, we all seek rest, warmth, and peace, but when comfort becomes the goal of everything, growth begins to die. I once knew a man named Devin. He was kind, gentle, and talented, but always stayed in the shallow end of life. He avoided conflict, turned down leadership roles, backed away from difficult conversations, not because he couldn't handle them, but because he didn't want to be uncomfortable. His world was calm, predictable, but it was also small, and deep down he knew it. The Stoics saw challenge not as punishment, but as a form of training. Marcus Aurelius faced war, betrayal, and illness, yet he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." To the Stoic mind, adversity wasn't the enemy, it was the classroom. Because the truth is, comfort never made anyone wiser. It never built resilience, depth, or compassion. Those things come when life stretches you, when you're forced to dig deeper than you thought you could go. We don't grow from what's easy. We grow when we stay present in what's hard. Now, this doesn't mean chasing pain or glorifying burnout. It means not running away from meaningful discomfort, the kind that invites growth. Ask yourself, when was the last time I did something that scared me a little? When was the last time I chose the harder path, not because I had to, but because I knew it would shape me? Maybe it's finally speaking your truth. Maybe it's forgiving someone who doesn't deserve it. Maybe it's showing up consistently when no one's clapping. The path of least resistance might feel good in the moment, but over time, it leaves you feeling hollow. Because deep down, we're not meant to stay soft. We're meant to become strong. Strength of character, strength of spirit, strength of will. The Stoics didn't ask for easy lives, they asked for the strength to meet life as it is, and to do so with dignity. So the next time life gets uncomfortable, pause before you retreat. Maybe that moment, the one you want to escape, is the exact moment your next level is trying to emerge. And maybe the real freedom you're looking for doesn't come from avoiding discomfort, but from walking through it calm, clear, and unshaken. Every one of these signs we've explored wasn't meant to make you feel ashamed. They're not accusations, they're invitations, gentle reminders to pause and ask, am I living in alignment with what truly matters to me? Because wisdom doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't come with a lightning bolt or a dramatic life shift. It shows up quietly. In the small choices you make when no one is watching. In the moments you choose honesty over comfort, reflection over distraction, discipline over reaction. And maybe that's the point. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You don't need to become a different person by tomorrow. You just need to become a little more aware today than you were yesterday. If even one of these 9 signs stirred something in you, if even one moment made you stop and say, that's maybe me, then that pause, that awareness, that's the beginning. Because transformation doesn't start with perfection. It starts with presence, with courage, with the willingness to look inward and say, I can do better, and I want to. The Stoics believed that we aren't shaped by what happens to us. We're shaped by how we choose to respond. And in that response, we either drift or we return. We either avoid or we evolve. So take a breath, sit with what resonated, and know that you are not behind. You are not broken. You are simply being invited back to yourself. And that, in itself, is an act of wisdom. If this message spoke to something in you, don't let it end here. Share this with someone who might need it. Leave a comment with your thoughts or reflections. We read everyone. And if you're on a journey of living with more presence, more peace, and more purpose, consider subscribing. This space was created for people like you, quiet thinkers, honest seekers, those who know that depth matters more than noise. And if nothing else, remember this. You are allowed to grow slowly. You are allowed to begin again. And every small moment of clarity is a step toward the life you were always meant to live.